Welcome back to Print 7577, the pre-press class combined lecture from Fullerton College's Printing Technology Department. This mouthful is brought to you by Professor Ben Hewitt and continues to tell you that we're going to be looking today at the PIA's Pre-Press Trainees Manual, Task 3.1, the Graphic Arts Workflow. I'll do my best to keep this one efficient. It can be a little bit dry, but this is kind of a useful chapter to look at because it tells you about the different types of jobs and careers you should be searching for if you want to get into the graphics industry, because there are a lot of different things out there that are outlined in this chapter. Although, depending on the print shop, the different positions talked about are really more like tasks. And sometimes you can find yourself doing way more tasks at a much smaller shop. Remembering my own personal story that but just prior to coming on to teaching, I was running the pre-press and production department of a 5-person print shop that you made good use of automation and worked as a very close-knit small team. And we did a lot of big work that normally would take a much larger print shop to do. When you only have 5 people there, most people have multiple jobs. As an example, not of myself, one of our finishing guys did finishing in the bindery, but he also did delivery and drove the delivery van for the free local deliveries all over SoCal. So all I'm trying to get at is don't expect to do only one job. That is a dream that no one of our age and our generation seem to get to live. Doing one job was a privilege of generations before us. So let's take a look at what we have to talk about here. I'm going on too much of a tangent. So I'd like us to look at the roles of different people, maybe not the roles of the person, but the different roles that take place, the tasks of the job. This is kind of your Schoolhouse Rock, a day in the life of a print job kind of video here. So we're looking at what designers do, salespeople, estimators, customer service representatives who are vital, production planners, schedulers, and all sorts of support people in the production to make something printed. Once again, we reached the digital workflow revolution. Much of this has simplified and streamlined since this book was written, but it was also simplified and streamlined a ton before it. The fact that you can do so much work on a computer greatly reduces the amount of people, time, and energy necessary to get a print job ready to go. So let's move on. So previously, the traditional hand-done, craft-oriented method of preparing artwork transformed into a modern, digital, hardware-intensive method, doing things on demand. And on-demand printing is a big deal these days. On-demand printing means that customers can order what they want when they want. Previously, when it was more craft-oriented and you had large teams of strippers, paste-up artists and photographers all taking pictures of layouts and developing film to make plates and printing only large runs off of offset presses and sometimes flexo presses, you had to meet a minimum order number to make it worth, a minimum quantity for your order to make it worth the time of the print shop to do it, because they're going to spend all that time and energy preparing plates to print. You better be ordering enough stuff to make it worth their while. So you couldn't get small print runs. It wasn't just graphics and, it wasn't just the graphic user interface, it wasn't just computers and desktop publishing that made this possible, it was digital print. Digital print and even just digital plate prep allows people to make much faster turnaround, but also produce much shorter print runs and still turn a profit. That last shop I worked for that did really good work, despite only being a few of us, we were primarily digital, and one of the advantages we had was the ability to go after clients who weren't worth the time of other shops. I.e., instead of having to compete for a shrinking market of people able to afford billions of books, we were able to go after the smaller mom and pop shops through our local region who only wanted a few thousand things made. So we were able to take and develop a new section of the market that didn't exist before, which is a very good place to be in business. So it begins when somebody decides they need to communicate something. What do they want to do? A lot of times it's advertising and they want to sell something. Not always. Sometimes they're teaching something and they want to make textbooks for it. Sometimes they're producing religious text and tracts. Sometimes they're producing things that want to be used for political means, like all those yard signs you see around these days. That's right. Political yard signs are in bloom right now. They pop up every October, but every 4 years you get a super bloom here in America when the yard signs get bigger and more plentiful. Anyways, you want to communicate something, you need to print something. Typically speaking, you produce something that's easy to mass produce, not very expensive to send in the mail, durable, because things have to survive use. People don't think about that. The strength of the paper you print on actually matters. Are you making a book? That book needs to survive years of someone paging through it back and forth and back and forth if it's a textbook. If it's one of those quick and dirty, perfect bound, New York Times bestseller stand at the grocery store checkout novels, those are meant to be read once or twice, so they're not as nice, and the paper's not as great. But for anything that's meant to be looked at more than once, you have to use decent paper. Anything getting sent through the mail has to survive the process of being handled by a lot of people and a lot of machines and transported in planes, trains, vehicles, trucks, delivered, chased by dogs, and lastly given to the mailbox at your place. It takes a lot to get a piece of mail somewhere, so it has to be durable enough to survive all of that. So the customer, they're the one who needs to communicate something. Without the customer, we're not in business, right? It's the horrible thing. Business would be so much easier without those pesky customers, but without them, we wouldn't be in business. So they would come up with things that they need to have made. Sometimes they know what they need. Sometimes they need help understanding what they need. In fact, one of the good things that I learned in my training for sales back in my mall store hobby shop days was even within hobbies and nerd things that you're selling to to us dorks who walk through the mall and stop at the store with the dragons in the window, there even within that, there's needs and wants. People may really like that super expensive shiny model they've never seen before, but you know what they actually need is the right equipment to build a model. You have to make sure that they are able to know if they're playing the games versions of these hobby games. I make sure that they're getting stuff they can actually use. Otherwise, no matter how cool that model looked in the box, they're going to be disappointed when they're not able to use it. Bringing an analogy over here to print, sometimes clients come in thinking they really want a postcard, but after a while, the amount of information they've given you and the types of things they're going to use it for, it turns out they don't want a postcard at all. They don't know this. Sorry, they do want a postcard, but they don't need one. They need a trifold brochure. And sometimes it's your job to help them understand the purposes of the different types of printed pieces to make sure they do the right one. Because in the end, if they order the wrong thing and it doesn't do the job they want it to do, it doesn't communicate the information, doesn't sell things or get people to come to an event, well, then they're going to start blaming you, the printer. They're not going to blame their own short-sightedness and non-knowledge of marketing. That's going to come down to us. So we need to help guide people and make sure they're making the right decisions that are best for them. The best thing you can do is help a client become a better client. If their business grows and they stay loyal to you, well, then you're going to get more and more work for them, aren't you? What I'm trying to say, and I'm always weaving my annoying business ethics into everything, is it doesn't hurt to invest in people. I find that investing in people and relationship in business really drives your business forward. If you're able to prove yourself as a loyal, trustworthy person, heck, even friendly, maybe you're actually friends. If you're able to create that kind of long-standing relationship, then as all the businesses you're helping grow, you'll grow too, because they'll need more things from you. And you'll be more than happy to print more postcards because, hey, why not do bigger orders? The designer is the person who does the graphical work and the layout. Oftentimes, this is one of those gray areas in the great Venn diagram of printing. Oftentimes, we in pre-press live in the football shape that overlaps pre-production and designer. Most of the time that I've worked in pre-press, I have also worked as a designer, but not always. Sometimes you still get clients who have their own designer or who are designers who send their work to you. But in pre-press, it's a reasonable assumption that you're going to do some of the designing some of the time. They make mock-ups or proofs. We call them proofs in my shops, but comps and mock-ups are more accurate names, but they make a preview of what it's going to look like to show the client. Many clients hire designers because they themselves aren't able to design. Sometimes they are happy to do this and trust the expertise of someone else. Sometimes they have a strange, bitter inferiority complex that they have to go get an artist, someone so beneath them, to help them out. But either way, a lot of times people don't necessarily have the imagination to understand when you're talking about something that's going to be created, what it's going to look like. So you make a mock-up or a comprehensive or a proof, and they get to look at it and say, gee, I kind of like this. I'm misusing proof a little bit because colloquially it is misused out here in California. Back east, they're a little more, and in some of the bigger shops out here, they're all a little bit more correct in their language. But if you're going to be working in the West Coast, a lot of times they'll use proof interchangeably. It's best to clarify what they mean when you start working places, just to make sure you don't say proof when they meant mock-up and mock-up when they meant proof, because there are some differences, which we'll get to later this semester. Designers can work alone. Some of the best ones I know work alone and work from home and actually freelance it and do a really good job. And I'm, as always, mystified that she's able to do that, because I tried and I fell so flat on my face trying to be a freelancer. It's not for everybody. It turns out I'm just not enough of a salesman, among other things. It also takes a lot of discipline to work at home. It really does, as I'm finding out during this COVID experience. Anyways, they may work alone, and sometimes there's an advertising agency with teams of designers. That always seemed like fun to me. I always wanted to work on a creative team. That's still a dream of mine, still ahead. Who knows? Maybe someday. And maybe I won't, because I really do enjoy teaching. Ad agencies provide more than just print, though. Ad agencies provide print graphic design as part of their services, but they'll also help people make TV ads, radio ads, internet spots, help you get your face on the side of a blimp, all that kind of good stuff. Anyways, I think I've gone long enough for this one video. I'll come back in a second one, so you guys don't have to sit through too long a video at a time.